Hi guys, welcome back to my tutorials. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can create such a layout using HTML and CSS. So to begin with, we have a blank HTML template and also we have a blank CSS file. And as I showed you is that the very first thing we always do is that we always link our CSS file. So I saw a comment someone saying that the CSS was not showing. That might be a result of not linking your CSS. So before you forget, always link your CSS file. Make sure the file name described here is the exact file name that is in your folders, right? Okay, so the next thing, let's go to the CSS file. Let's add some default CSS styles. So we're going to start with a margin of 0, padding of 0, box sizing of border box. So these are just basic CSS styles to make sure that we remove all the margins from all the elements, we remove all the paddings from all the elements, we don't remove the box sizing, we set this box sizing property to border box. And this one helps in making sure that the paddings and the margins are all inclusive of the width you give an element. The next thing, let's go to the body. I always like adding some paddings to the body. I'll show you why. And then let's go to fonts.google.com. And then let's look for a font called Inter. This is the font I'm using, Inter. Then here on the bottom, you can see get code, get font, get embed code. And then copy the import to your project. So just copy the import. So we are done in the basic steps. So let's continue with our layout. So what can we see in this layout? So what I can see, this is like a section that shows some categories, maybe profile, New York, relaxing, person, fashions. And then in each category, we can see some sample images. So for instance, we can see this is like a model or a person. We have one featured image and then we have other small images here on the bottom. Same thing here. So we have one featured image for the nature and then we have other breadcrumbs that shows other images here. So let's begin. How are we going to create this? This is a full section. And when you are working with HTML, you always like to use something called the semantic tags. Semantic tags is telling the browsers or telling the indexing bots what they are dealing with. So instead of using a div, we are going to use a section tag. This is what we call semantic tag, is because we are explaining to the crawler bots what our document is all about. And then inside the section, we are going to create a heading level 2 and say popular collections. So this is the heading I'm just copying. The next thing we are going to create is the categories. So we can create a div with a class of categories, and then let's create these categories. So we have profile and copy down and change this to New York. Copy this down to, and then we say relaxing. Copy this down to person and then fashion. And then finally fashion. So we are done with that. And then after that, you can see now we get into a section whereby we have multiple items. So we have done with this section of the layout. Then you are going down directly to this section. So this section, you can see it has two elements, the left hand section and the right hand section. And these elements, they also have some other layouts beneath them. So what we are going to do is that we are going first to create this section and then this section, and then you can go ahead and insert the items inside each section. So I'm going to create a div with a class of row to signify this is a row with two elements. And then inside the first row, we have two cards. So we are just going to create one card and then we can duplicate it in the other card. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a card. So a card will represent each card because you can see they're all taking the same layout. You can see this is similar to this, just that the images are changing. And then inside the card, what we are going to create inside, this is the specific card. So let me see if this one, yeah. So this is the specific card I'm working with. You can see we have a featured image, and then we have other images here. So we are going to create a div with a class of featured images or image. It's a one image. Then you create an image. So you might be asking, where can I get these exact images? These images come from Unsplash. You can go to Unsplash and get the images you'd like to use. But in case you want to use the exact images I've used, go to my GitHub repository. So github.com/techwithtwin/tiktok-projects, and then go down and look for a project called Popular Collections. So look for, this is the Popular Collection. You can see it here. So we go to the Popular Collections. You can click inside it. And then there's a folder called images. These are all the images that we are going to use. These images labeled C1, C2, C3, C4, these are these images. And then N1 to N4, these are the nature images. So go ahead and do that. And then let me create a folder here and call it images. And then I'm going to copy those files. So I'm going to copy all those files, and then let's continue. You can see them here. So the featured image for the first card is called C1. We are just going to say images c1.jpg. We're not going to add some alt right now. And then after the featured images, we have 3 more images. So we are just going to call them others. Other images. You can see how I'm creating this card. So this card has 2 elements, the featured image and the other images. So featured image and the other images here. In the other images, we are going to create 3 images. So we can say image times 3. This is a shortcut we can use. We get 3 images created. And then here, we're just going to do images. And then this one is c2.jpg. Then we go to c3. And you go to c4. We are done with that card. So let's go live and see what we have. So this is what we have, but now you can realize that these images are too big. All right, so these images are very, very, very big. So I'm going to my CSS first, and then so let's first grab we give them a class. Before we go to the CSS, we can reduce the sizes here directly in the HTML. So we can say width 200 pixels, and then you can copy this down to all the other elements. All right, you can see the images have been resized. So before even we add the other card, let's go ahead and start styling this. So we are going to start with this top section. So let's grab the section. So we said the section holds everything. So this one is a section. It holds this heading. It also holds the categories, and then it holds the row. So we are going to first display flex here. And then flex direction, we can do column. And then let's add some gaps between these elements. We can do 1 rem. Then you can see the gaps being added. After the gaps, let's now move and make sure we can place everything in the center. So we can say align items to the center. This one is mostly, you can see these popular categories collections showing. And then let's change the background of the section. So the background color, we can say hash FFE8DB. All right, you can see now the color has been added. So the next thing you might realize is that the content is too close to the edges. That's when we add some padding. And then you can say padding 1 rem. All right. Final thing you can notice on the corners, the section edges are too sharp. We can add a border radius of 5 pixels. Done. So we're done with that section. Let's now move to the categories section. As you can see here, the categories are displayed flex and they have a background of color white. So we can say dot categories display flex. And then you can see the elements are too close to each other. We let's give some gaps. We can say gap of 0.5 rem. You can see the gap has been added successfully. Something we forgot to do is that in the body, we forgot to specify the font. And say font family Inter. And then as a fallback, we can use sans serif. You can see now the font looks amazing. And then how did I get Inter? You can see the Inter font here being specified there. Finally, let's now grab these paragraphs and give them a background color of white. So we can say categories, direct children paragraphs, and then we can say a background color of white. You can see it, and then let's add some paddings. Padding 0.3 rem. We can see now that looks nice. So we are not going to focus on that. Let's continue. The next section you're going to fix is the row section. You're going to have two cards. Let me even add the next one. So I'm going to copy this down. And then we can change the images. So the featured image here is N1. The next other images, we go to N2. N2, and then we go to N3, N4. So we have now two cards. This one is the first card, and this one is the second card. This one is the first card. Both of them are in the row. So let's go ahead and style that row. So let's first save. So the other one has been added here on the bottom. So let's grab the row. Dot row. Can display it flex. You can see those both images have been displayed side by side, those cards. And then let's give some gap of maybe 1 rem. Done. So the next thing, let's specify the width of the card. So I'm going to use 300 pixels. So let's do dot card, then width of 300 pixels. Okay, nothing happened much. And then display flex, flex direction of column, and then a gap of maybe 1 rem. You can see now the gap has kicked in. So let's move forward and start styling the featured image. So the featured image is located at card featured image, and then it has an image inside it. So we are going to focus on the featured image. So we can say the card dot featured image img, and then here we can specify the height of the featured image. We can use 15 rem. You can see now the height has been added, but now the image does not occupy full height. That's not a problem. You're going to fix that, and then you're going to say an overflow of hidden. We don't want the image to overflow. So let me even show you why we need the overflow of hidden. So let's go to the image. So we can say card dot featured image, and then the image itself. So let's give it a width of 100%, height of 100%, and object fit. Now you can see the featured image. So if I come and add a border radius on the featured image wrapper or the div, so I'm going to say border radius of maybe 5 pixels. Let me use 20 pixels. You can see nothing happens because the image is overflowing. But if we come here and say overflow hidden, now you can see the border radius kicks in because now the wrapper prevents the image from overlapping, or even if it overlaps, it is ignored. So we are done with the featured image. Let's focus on the other images. So the other images are located at the card and then other images. So let's go ahead and grab that. So we can say dot card.other images. So this one I'm going to display grid. So this is not a topic on grids. I might create a tutorial on how to work with CSS grids. But for now, if you don't know how grids work, grids are basically like Flexbox. They help us lay out complex structures. So we display it grid, and if you save, nothing happens. Because in grid, it's not like in Flexbox. In grid, you need to specify how many columns do you need, how many rows do you need. So the next thing is that let's add something called grid template columns. So the grid template columns is used to make sure that you can specify how many columns do I want. So these columns can be specified using percentages. You can specify them using fractions. You can specify them using fixed values. You can also use auto, but now we want us to use, let's first use percentages. But now we need 3 columns. If we needed like 4 columns, it's easier to use percentages, because if I wanted, let's say I wanted 2 columns, I could do 50%, 50%. This one specifies 2 columns, 50% each. But now dividing 100% by 3 is always a hassle. So we can go ahead and use fractions. So in fractions, you can say one fraction. This one means whole. But we could also go ahead and create 2 fractions, which is similar to saying 50%, 50%. So nothing changes. But now I want 3. So then I leave the hassle to CSS grids to create, to divide and make sure that we are not worrying about rounding off 100% divided by 3. Is it 33? Is it 30, like that? So you can see them, the images there. But now we are facing an issue whereby the issue we are currently facing is that let's also make sure these other images occupies the full width. So we can say width 100%. So nothing changes, but now the images are overflowing. This is the problem we are facing. So after doing that, let's also add some gaps between these images. We can say gap of 0.4 rem. So you can see the gap has been added. The images are overflowing. What if I come here on other images and say overflow hidden? Yes, now it prevents them from overflowing, but now it crops out some other images. So how do we fix that? We go now to the image itself. So we can say .card .other images, and then grab the image. So how did we grab that? So .card, we go to the other images, and then we go to the image directory. So here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to specify the height for the image. So I'm going to use 7 rem. You can see the images now have been squeezed. To fill that space. And then let's say the width to be 100%. So we want it to fill 100% of the width. Now you can see the images now are being shrinked with the width and the height to make sure that they fill the available space. Let's also add some border radius. So we can say border radius of 20 pixels. You can see now the images look nice. And then let's do, to prevent the images from being overstretched like this lady, you can add, I'm going to add object fit of cover. Now you can see the images stretch out to fill the available spaces. So that's it, guys. That's how you create such a section. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, share with your friends, and let me know in the comments. What do you think? Thank you.